Harry Hole as a character, he was born on the airplane between Oslo and Sydney, and at that time I had an idea of what kind of guy he was, and it's always hard to remember how the original idea was. It's like when you have a friend and you've known him for many years. When you look back, you really can't remember how it was, what your first impression was because it sort of develops so over time. But I think that the Harry that was born on that flight more or less was the same person that was in the Batman that I wrote in Australia. He has developed, I think he has probably moved from being an innocent guy but with problems to a guy who has certainly committed crimes. He has not only solved crimes, he has committed crimes himself. And so he has moved towards the dark side. And over the years he has become more and more like the criminals that he's hunting. So the story also is becoming darker and darker. I've been asked a lot of times how much Harry Hole is in me. And the first years and when I did interviews for the first couple of novels, I always said and honestly meant that there's nothing of Harry in me, that he's totally a character of fiction. Now, over the years, I realized that that is not absolutely true. There's probably more of Harry in me and more of me in Harry than I realized. But it's something that you see later on when you look back, and you can see why you wrote about his personal dilemmas, that it has to do with your own life. And it's also hard to not to put yourself into a character that you write so much about, and just choosing Harry's point of view makes it impossible not to use yourself in that character. I have an idea for Harry's life, for what is going to happen to him, but I don't know exactly how many cases that includes. What I can say is that there's at least 2 more cases, but I've always said that Harry's near future looks bleak. After that it's getting even worse, and after that everything is going to hell. So he's on his way to hell, but there may be some good days in between there. I've never really got fed up with Harry, although I've been writing about him for many years now. I've written about other characters, other kind of stories, short novels, but I've always come back to Harry. And I don't know, he's sort of my, my buddy. He's my best friend. Over the years, I've got to know him quite well, and I like the mix of bad guy, good guy that's in Harry, and that he's not the perfect guy, but his intentions are good, and he's always trying to do good. On the other side, he's got some mean streaks, and that's just the way people are. And so it's to me, he's becoming more and more alive, and thus getting more and more interesting as a character that you can use in literature. I know how everything will end for Harry. I will not reveal it for you here now, but it will be in one of my books in not too far future. I've been asked a couple of times if I have any special actor in mind, when and if Harry Hole will become a movie. I did think of Nick Nolte for a while. He's a great actor, and I think he's got some of the same, drama in his person, the contradiction, the villain and the hero in the same person. So, but it's hard for me, you know. I don't think in terms of films. I've said no to Harry Hole becoming a film because I'm still in the process of writing the series, so I don't want anything to disturb my work. But when I'm finished with the series, it certainly will be interesting to see. And if they still want to make a movie out of it, then it will be interesting to see what actors could suit that role. Øystein Eikeland, which is actually a friend of mine, so I've been allowed to use his name. He is the cab driver and Harry's closest friend, and his maybe not his soulmate, because he in my next novel, The Leopard, Harry asks Øystein why did they become friends, because they are so different. And Øystein said that, well, we have one thing in common. We couldn't find any other friends, so that's why. And but you know, he's a very funny guy, and he's a simple guy, but then again a very intelligent guy, and he's a great talker, you know, and Harry loves to talk with him. And he's also, since Harry doesn't like to tell too much about himself, he's nice to have there because he can tell us things about Harry that Harry himself can't see, and you know, things from his youth and when he grew up. So he's very useful for that purpose. I think that most writers, they write as a reaction to reading, and it's the same thing with me, of course. I think in my case it's sort of a social reflex that when you write stories, it's because you've read great stories, and it's sort of always a tribute to the things that you've read. And I've read a lot. I started reading as a very young man. My mother was a librarian, and my father was also a keen book reader. But I didn't read especially much crime literature. But there was one guy that I was introduced to not too many years ago, and that was Jim Thompson. And American writer, wrote hard-boiled crime in the 50s, and he also wrote for the film industry. He was considered, you know, or he tried to be a very commercial, mainstream writer. But he was so good at writing. I mean, he was a true artist. So I don't think he was able, you know, to write mainstream enough, because he had his ideas were too original. His urge to sort of drill into the human mind and human nature was too strong. So he's just, you know, it was called the dime store Dostoevsky. I think that's exactly what it is. So if I have like one favorite crime writer, it must be Jim Thompson. I think that what drives you as a writer, or at least drives me, is not how the book will do. I don't portray the reader when I write. I'm just trying to create a story that I myself can read in 10 or 20 years and still think is a very, very good story. I never thought of in terms of success nationally or internationally. On the other hand, when your job is to sit in a little room with your laptop and write stories, it's very bizarre, you know, to travel around the world. Last year I was in Manila in the Philippines, and I saw my book behind the counter, and it just strikes you that it can't be you. It's impossible that I sit in my little room in Oslo and write about things in Oslo, people in Oslo, things that I know, this restaurant here, and there's an audience in Philippines that are reading about these restaurants where I used to have my dinner and my beers.